In 1944, the world's leaders met in secret and rewrote global finance. The answers to these questions and much of the modern global economy can be traced back to a single groundbreaking conference held in 1944 in a small town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods. This isn't just a history lesson, it's the origin story of the financial world we live in today. Imagine the year is 1944. The world is in chaos. World War II is still raging, but the Allied powers can see the light at the end of the tunnel. They knew that winning the war was only half the battle. The other half was winning the peace. The Great Depression of the 1930s had shown everyone how quickly economic instability could lead to political extremism and conflict. Competitive devaluations, where countries cheapened their currencies to boost exports, and high tariffs had choked off international trade, creating a vicious cycle of poverty and resentment. The world's leaders were determined not to let history repeat itself. So, delegates from 44 Allied nations gathered at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods. Their goal was ambitious: to design a new international economic system that would promote stability, foster cooperation, and prevent the kind of economic warfare that had preceded the war. For 3 weeks, these financial architects hammered out a deal that would shape the next several decades. The two leading figures at the conference were John Maynard Keynes, the brilliant and charismatic British economist, and Harry Dexter White, the determined American Treasury official. While they shared the same ultimate goal, their approaches were quite different, reflecting the shifting balance of global power. Britain, weakened by the war, wanted a system with more flexibility. The United States, emerging as the world's dominant economic and military power, wanted a system built on stability and predictability. After much debate, the Bretton Woods Agreement was born. It was a masterpiece of compromise and foresight, resting on 3 main pillars. The first and most crucial pillar was a new system of exchange rates. Instead of letting currencies fluctuate wildly or having countries devalue them at will, the agreement created a system of fixed but adjustable exchange rates. How did it work? It was simple, yet elegant. The US dollar was pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Then all other participating currencies were pegged to the US dollar. This effectively made the US dollar the world's reserve currency, the anchor of the entire system. Countries could only change their exchange rate in cases of a fundamental disequilibrium, and even then, they needed approval. This brought an unprecedented level of stability and predictability to international trade and investment. The second pillar was the creation of the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. Think of the IMF as the system's referee and emergency lender. Its job was to monitor the exchange rates and ensure countries played by the rules. More importantly, if a country ran into temporary balance of payments problems, meaning more money was flowing out than in the IMF could provide short-term loans, this was a crucial safety net. It prevented countries from resorting to destructive policies like devaluing their currency or imposing trade barriers just to solve a short-term cash crunch. The IMF was there to help them weather the storm without disrupting the entire system. The third pillar was the establishment of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which we now know as the World Bank. While the IMF focused on short-term stability, the World Bank's mission was long-term development. Its initial task was to finance the reconstruction of war-torn Europe and Japan. Once that monumental task was underway, its focus shifted to providing loans and technical assistance for development projects in poorer countries around the world, funding everything from dams and roads to schools and hospitals. It was a tool designed to combat poverty and build a more prosperous global community. For about 25 years, from the late 1940s to the early 1970s, the Bretton Woods system worked remarkably well. This period is often called the Golden Age of capitalism. Global trade boomed, economies grew at a rapid pace. The middle class expanded in many Western countries, and standards of living rose dramatically. Japan and West Germany experienced their economic miracles, rising from the ashes of war to become industrial powerhouses. The system provided the stable foundation upon which this incredible post-war prosperity was built. It fostered cooperation and integration, a stark contrast to the economic nationalism of the 1930s. But no system is perfect, and by the late 1960s, the Bretton Woods system began to show cracks. The main problem was its reliance on the US dollar. The United States was running large deficits, partly due to the Vietnam War and domestic spending programs. This meant more and more dollars were flowing out into the world. Other countries started accumulating vast reserves of US dollars. At first, this was fine, but soon the number of dollars held abroad far exceeded the US gold reserves. This created a massive dilemma. Foreign central banks had the right to exchange their dollars for gold at the fixed rate of $35 an ounce. If they all decided to do this at once, the US would run out of gold, and the entire system would collapse. The dollar was overvalued, but devaluing it would shatter confidence in the system's anchor currency. The US was trapped. The breaking point came on August 15, 1971, in a move that became known as the Nixon shock. President Richard Nixon unilaterally announced that the United States would no longer convert dollars to gold at a fixed value. He effectively slammed the gold window shut. This single act severed the link between the dollar and gold, cutting the main anchor of the Bretton Woods system. For a couple of years, countries tried to salvage the system of fixed exchange rates, but by 1973 it was officially abandoned. The world moved to the system of floating exchange rates that we have today, where the values of currencies are determined by supply and demand in the foreign exchange market. So, the Bretton Woods system, as it was originally designed, is gone. But its legacy is absolutely everywhere. The two institutions it created, the IMF and the World Bank, remain powerful players in the global economy. They continue to provide loans, promote stability, and fund development, though their roles and policies have evolved significantly and often court controversy. More fundamentally, the spirit of Bretton Woods, the idea that international cooperation is essential for global prosperity endures. The system taught us that a stable framework is necessary for international trade and investment to flourish. While we now have floating exchange rates, central banks around the world still coordinate and intervene to prevent excessive volatility. The US dollar, despite no longer being backed by gold, remains the world's dominant reserve currency, a direct legacy of its central role in the Bretton Woods era. The story of Bretton Woods is a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when nations come together to solve common problems. It was a bold, ambitious plan born out of crisis, and it fundamentally reshaped our world for the better. It wasn't perfect, and its collapse created new challenges. But the prosperity it unleashed and the institutions it created are still with us today. It's the deal that literally built the modern economy. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into economic history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. One hotel, one agreement, one currency to rule them all. Let me know in the comments what you think about the legacy of Bretton Woods. See you in the next video.